I tell people oftentimes don't trade your dignity for belonging because I'll hear people who will say a thing and there are things that are happening in their organizations that are really bothering them. Know your value. When it's time to negotiate for whatever reason, whether it be salary or time, we forget our value. And you talked about women specifically. I don't think that most women have a confidence issue. Sometimes people say, just be more confident. I don't think it's a confidence issue. I think it's a negotiation problem.
Welcome to Lunch with Leaders, the podcast where we explore what it takes to lead, thrive, and create lasting impact. I'm Adesileju Dogalanya, a TEDx speaker, leadership strategist, and the founder of African Women in STEM. Each episode features insightful conversations with innovators, trailblazers, and leaders from around the world who are transforming cultures, redefining leadership, and shaping the future of work. Together, we'll share the stories, strategies, and mindsets that will empower women in STEM to amplify their visibility, influence, and impact. So if you're ready to lead boldly, amplify your voice, and help influence what leadership looks like for women in STEM, hit follow, share this podcast, and join us every week for impactful conversations, powerful stories, and practical strategies. Our guest today is Ranieka Weston. Ranieka is a seasoned leadership expert and thinking partner with over 20 years experience across commercial learning, talent management, and executive coaching. She's held pivotal roles from sales manager to VP of talent management, and she understands the corporate complexities that can hinder authentic growth. Her career is defined by her ability to help leaders dismantle the personal and social narratives that block their true potential. She's a sought-after speaker and consultant, and Ranieka specializes in guiding organizations through transformational change by leveraging the power of narrative. She reshapes stories that drive decision-making and helps teams foster inclusion, boost innovation, and achieve long-term success. So whether she's delivering a keynote or coaching an executive, Ranieka's mission is clear: to challenge existing paradigms and empower individuals to lead with purpose and authenticity. I'm so excited. So welcome to the show, Ranieka. Thank you for joining us today.
With an intro like that, who can't be excited? I got a new hype woman. I'm taking you everywhere.
I'm so glad I know you because your bio is incredible. And Ranieka, you're like, every day I thank God for the people in my life, and you're one of the people that I thank God for.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so let's get into it. Listen, as I was prepping for this, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is for me. Everybody listening, you can take something. But selfishly, I'm looking forward to everything we're going to talk about in this chat.
So all right.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, I'm ready.
I'm ready too. So you spent over 20 years working with leaders across sales, talent development, and executive coaching. When did you first notice that so many high-performing professionals are capable of more, but not fully stepping into it?
I would say early on, but I don't know if I could identify that. In my first role outside of sales, the role was a training manager, and there was a young lady on my team who was exceptional. She had exceptional disease state knowledge. She was really good at getting individuals to tap into the thing that they needed to for sales training, because to go through this training, if you did not pass, you did not have a job with the organization. I talked to her about how great she was, and she sort of downplayed a bit. Again, she leaned back into the fact that she was a nurse, and I said, you're so much more than that. So that was probably the first time. But when I started seeing it consistently was actually when I left corporate and started coaching full time, because you get to see different industries, you get to see different people. Tupac, in a song he made, he said, all around the world, the same song. It's true, all around the world, depending on where you are, your organization, you think it's very different, but it's not. The people have something in them that oftentimes just need to be brought out.
That's interesting to note. And I'm glad you said that earlier on, you didn't really recognize it to be like that. Obviously, the woman you were talking about is incredible. She couldn't step into that. And I talk about this a lot because it has a lot to do with conditioning, programming, how we're trained, and things like that, that doesn't allow us to step into that. And even when all that is happening, we always just kind of brush, oh, it's not a big deal, it's nothing, and we don't see it for what it is. So this is definitely a problem that keeps reoccurring, and I'm glad we're having this conversation right now. And just going on what I said now about having social narratives or personal narratives that shape how we show up and the things that we do. In your experience and in your work as an executive coach, what are some of the most common stories that you see talented professionals tell themselves, especially women, for example, that holds them back from being visible, from stepping into the authority, similar to the lady you just mentioned?
I think some of the stories that we tell ourselves have a generational narrative. So there are certain things that we tell ourselves that our parents probably told us, that their parents told them. I tell people oftentimes, don't trade your dignity for belonging, because I'll hear people who will say a thing and there are things that are happening in their organizations that are really bothering them. And in order to get along, in order to belong, oftentimes they trade who they are. There was a time as a woman of color, as a Black woman, where my ancestors had to trade their safety for belonging. Maybe they could not share all of who they were because it just was unsafe. I do believe that some of that has been transferred down, that narrative. When you talk about the patterns of things that you see, a lot of the patterns are narratives that have been passed down from generation to generation. I'll give you a perfect example. I remember I was working with a woman and we were both senior in our positions. And she said she was going to invite folks over to her house. And I said, you going to have them people at your house? They don't see your house. They're going to see everything in there. She said that was a way for her to connect, not only with her colleagues, but other people who were much more senior than her in the organization. Well, my family, I'm from the South. I had a mother who said, don't let those people at work come into your house. My grandmother told my mother that. So she passed that on to me. I would say it was in the top of the number one things that probably held me back from maybe even promotions. Because a lot of it is not so much your skills and what you can do, it is how comfortable people are around you. And people become more comfortable the more that they're in your space. And I was a person that I do the Christmas parties, I might do the bare minimum, but the idea of someone coming to my house, the idea of us being more than just waving at each other at work, no. I have and have had clients that still are challenged with that same thing. I would say the second thing that I see most often is the inability to negotiate for themselves, and they're actually negotiating against themselves. So the things that they want to say no to, they say yes to. When they know they should speak up, they stay silent. They take what's given to them versus saying, this is what I need or this is what my team needs. It may be something as simple as budget. It could be head count. It could be the boundaries that they need to set with themselves. So I would say those are the things that I see most often.
When you're saying that, you kind of touched a nerve right there. I have to say this because this is really important. I remember many years ago, I was accepting this role and I had a talk with myself. Okay, I was like, this
Mm,
is what I'm going to ask for. I am not going below that. I did all the talking. When I got
mhm,
on the phone with some executives, all of that went out the window. When he asked me, what are you expecting? Immediately, that went out the window. And I said
mm,
something way
mm,
less.
mm,
Then I caught myself and I was like, but I don't know what I said, but of course, all of that didn't matter. They heard the thing that was
mhm.
way less, and that was what I got. And that bothered me for years. And actually bothered me more when
Yeah.
I realized, you know how you have like percentiles of payment? So let's say there was
Mhm,
a range for my level. I was literally at the bottom and nobody was close. So when we talk about these things, the impact is a lot. Because, I mean, all the stress and headache and just for years feeling like I was, being, like I sold myself short and for all the work I'm doing. And then when I found out that was like way at the bottom, that even made it worse. So this
yeah.
is real. This is real. And it still happens even today. We're going to
Oh
go
yeah.
more into that because just before we got on this conversation, you told me that you now talk more about a negotiator's mindset. And that is really important because as women especially, And
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about women in STEM. We do not negotiate for a lot of reasons. One of them being that we are in STEM and we kind of feel that, to your point, sometimes we trade certain things just to belong. You say something to the line or to the tune of, or line, whatever. I don't know how people
Mm-hmm.
say that your life is negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually when we talk about negotiations, people think first salary. That was me for a long time. But if you're thinking about negotiation as broader than that, how would it play into the decisions you make or the conversations you have in your career, whether you're looking for a job or just navigating your career?
Yeah. So I have this thing I call the foundational five. The first one is know your value. When it's time to negotiate, for whatever reason, whether it be salary or time, we forget our value. And you talked about women specifically. I don't think that most women have a confidence issue. Sometimes people say, just be more confident. I don't think it's a confidence issue. I think it's a negotiation problem. We've got to know our value. The second thing is we have to stand in our strength. There are times where we feel like legs are like noodles, or our voice begins to tremble, or our heart begins to beat really hard and fast when we're talking about something. So we've got to make sure we stand in our strength. We also have to make sure that we shift how we navigate. If I am negotiating something at home, I may not operate the same way as if I'm talking to the person that I report into. My tone may be different. The way that I approach the individual might be different. Boundaries are important when it comes to negotiation. Even if you don't win, to your point about not getting the money that you were looking for, if that negotiation had gone really well, there were a lot of small wins that you may have gotten. Maybe the win was just you asked. You actually opened up your mouth and said the number that you thought that you were worthy of. Even if they said no, it's okay. You did that. You did that thing. A lot of times we don't even celebrate the little win because we think the big win is I got to get the money. Well, if I don't get the money, I don't get anything. So then we don't celebrate. I think making sure that each of those components aligns with you and that you really check yourself before you actually go into a negotiation, whatever that may be, whether it be for money. I had a woman the other day I was talking to, and this woman is not performing very well at work. And I said, but you still have value. Person's been in the job for about a year. I said, a year ago, they saw you as the candidate. And so you got to remind them that that value is still there. There just may be misalignment in what their expectations are and what you're delivering. So I think you can use that in any place and any time.
This is good. This is really, really good. I like what you said about it not being a confidence issue. Sometimes it will be, but it's not just enough to say be confident. You have to know
Mhm.
your value. And back to what we said in the beginning, when people play things down, maybe because the thing comes easy to them, they take it for granted. But the reality is that maybe 95% of the people around you cannot do that. Knowing your value is realizing that the fact that it comes easily to me does not mean it's not worth anything. That is so key. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Knowing your value also brings a certain level of the need to not just know your value, but also express that so people will know your value.
Mhm.
So, step one, know your value. Step two, let people know. And many women in STEM, I'll say that, struggle with asking for what they want without feeling like they're being too much. Even if you don't say it, people around you will make you feel like you're being too much. And again, being in the minority is one of those things that add to that. But how can leaders learn to advocate for themselves with confidence in this case? Now that you know your value, you step up and confidently advocate for yourself and for the things that you want without losing who they are in a sense. Because I hear women tell me things like, but that's not me,
Mm.
but how can they do that in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that brings out the person that they are, but still get what they want?
Yeah, how can they express their value in a way
Mm-hmm.
that feels genuine to them?
Yeah.
Because some women are like, I don't want to brag, I don't want to boast. So the first question I would ask if someone says that's not me, I would say, well, who are you? Because that would be the first thing I'd want to know, because that's the first thing that each individual has to know. Speak to my value because I don't really know my value. I have to really know what that is. And I also have to be real about, does my value align with what someone else is looking for? I love basketball, and this is basketball season. If I can shoot it out of the gym, right? I shoot, 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 and that's my value. But I come to a team that they have 5 other shooters, maybe they don't really need what I have. But that doesn't mean that I'm not the best shooter. It doesn't mean that I diminish the fact that I can shoot it out of the gym. That's who I am. And so for leaders, I would say first you have to know what is the thing that makes you valuable. What makes it that maybe you've worked really hard for, maybe it comes really easy for you. I have to say for people where things come really easy, put in more work and see how much better you'll be. Then you might value it. But if something comes so easy, you may not see value because you didn't put any work in to get it. So that would be the first thing I would say to leaders. The second thing is, who is it that I call your bunny rabbit? And I used to run. And so when I would run like a 5K, I'd choose somebody and I'm like, that's my bunny rabbit. As long as I could keep pace with them and they don't outpace me, they could be ahead of me, but they can't outpace me, I'm good. And so I think leaders need to find their bunny rabbit. Who is it that aligns with me or is similar to me? Maybe they're a couple of steps ahead. If my background is accounting, who is it that's really good in accounting? Find a person who doesn't necessarily boast, but they know their value. When you're around them, you can feel the fact that they're confident. They speak and say the things they want. And then say, what is it about them that's so different from me? And what would I need to do if I just turn the knob up a bit to be more like that? Is it that I need to be around people who actually see me for who I am? Because sometimes as a leader, you're surrounding yourself with people that don't really see your greatness. It could be your leader, it could be the people on your team. So maybe you need to find some people outside of the work setting that actually see your greatness and help you to begin to see it in yourself. So I would say those would be the top 2 things that I would recommend.
And that is so great. But as you were talking, I'm just thinking because I work with women a lot. When someone says you should know your value, one of the things I talk about a lot is self awareness. I think the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of everything is being self aware. But as human beings, we generally don't feel comfortable sitting still, getting to know ourselves for who we truly are. So you can tell someone know your value and they'll be like, but. So what can you tell someone that's struggling with? Okay, but yeah, know my value, but what am I supposed to do? Because maybe they want you to give them the answers, but it's not an answer that you can give them. They have to do some
Yeah.
self-reflection. So what are maybe 1 or 2 things I can tell
Yeah.
them may help them just get self-aware.
I think the first thing, and I am not here to sell this assessment at all, it's free, but there's something called a VIA, and you can use any sort of assessment like this to know your value. Most people can't name their top 3 or 4 values, or they'll say a value, but it's not really their top value. People say, oh, I value my family, because that's the admirable thing to say, but you work till 8 o'clock every night and you miss every one of your kids' games. You don't value family. Like maybe you value money and you are working hard so that you can take care of your family, but those two aren't really aligned if your actions don't align with what you say you value. The first thing people should do is figure out, what are your values? Like one of my top values is creativity. So if I'm in a setting where I can't be creative, I feel stifled. The value that I bring to situations is that I'm going to bring you some creativity. If you're figuring out how to dot the I's and cross the T's, I'm the one that's saying, what if? What if we do this? What if we do that? So I know that is part of my value. It may not be valuable to everyone, but I know that is one of my top values, and that's the value that I bring. So that's the first thing I would say is understand your values, and that may help you to understand your value of who you are. The other piece of that is, and there's probably 3 parts. The other is to sit still with yourself sometimes and say, when I leave this space, they got that dash in between birth and death. What is it that people would say that you do so very well? Maybe you help to make people be seen. Maybe you're the person that's always problem solving. Maybe you're the person that always pulls people together. Think about what that dash is in between your birth and your expiration date, and that probably can help you to say what your value is. And then I would say the last thing is you got to speak it into the air. I believe everything that we put out in the universe will come back at us. So if you're putting out in the universe what your value is and how you can support other people and how you have supported people, it will come back to you. And as it comes back, that energy will get you even more pumped up, more excited about the value that you bring. And it will just continue to sort of be this infinity circle of you putting it out there, it coming back to you from the universe and everyone else around you.
This is like a masterclass. This is
I don't know about
incredible.
that.
And I'm really glad that we talked about this. If you're listening, rewind and listen again because this is very, very important. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Every day you work with leaders, navigating power dynamics. I remember when I was in corporate, people always say, "Oh, I don't want to get involved in politics," but I'm like, "You're involved either way, whether you want to
It's
be or
right,
not." Like,
right.
there's no passive anything. It's either it's happening to you or you're actively involved in the way you want to show up. The leaders you coach, they're always navigating power dynamics, ambiguities, and differences. So, what will separate the leaders who can influence the outcomes of whatever the environment is throwing at them from
Mm-hmm.
those who will burn out
Mm.
or worst case, well, burnout is terrible, or maybe just disengage and be like, you know what, I don't care anymore, which I see a lot. Those two happen more often than you think. What will separate people that are able to survive it, influence the outcome versus those that fall victim to, you know, things like burnout or just
Yeah.
disengaging?
Everyone says culture, culture, and then everyone says that corporate is a game. Well, it's true. I mean, if I'm playing Monopoly, there's a certain culture of how we interact versus if we play in spades, right? The energy is different. The people show up different. The way you play the game is different. And so it's the same in a corporation. It's like I can say that I don't want to play the game, but when you're in your home, you play a game. If you have a partner in your home, there's a way that you operate with them. If you have children, there's a way that they play the game. They know how to manipulate to get what they want, right? So they learn early how to play the game where we want to play it, right? I think in corporations, the same thing is you have to literally say, I am here to do my job in excellence. I'm here to support this corporation because corporations are there to make money. If you're in a nonprofit, you still want the nonprofit to be successful. But in that, there's a way in which people operate. And I've got to figure out how do I operate in here? And I need to be intentional about this. Because if I'm not intentional, I'm standing on the outside watching this thing that's almost like, when you go to the carnival and they had that little thing that whirls around and whirls. It's almost like you're sitting and you're watching things happen. And not only watching them happen, you're watching them happen to you. And I've never wanted to be a person that something was happening to. I always wanted to be in control or at least have some glimpse of control of what is happening to me. So I think the first thing is to understand that this is somewhat of a game and there is culture involved. How do I want to be involved in that? I think the next thing is to operate in a space of curiosity and where you give the most generous assumptions. We see a thing and oftentimes jump in and say, I know exactly why they did what they did. And my boss doesn't like me and my peers don't want to work. What's the most generous assumption that you could make? That doesn't mean you make excuses, but maybe the most generous assumption is your leader is overwhelmed and stressed. And the way they are interacting with you is a result of the way someone is interacting with them. That doesn't mean that you don't address it. It doesn't mean that you don't try to change it. But if you come from a space of the most generous assumption, it gives you the opportunity to step back and get curious about things. And then I think the last thing is for people to say, what do I want? Most people at work, they don't even know what they want. They show up, they want to make sure the paycheck comes on the 15th and the 30th. But there's so much more than that. I mean, you got to figure out, do I want a career here? Do I want to improve my skill sets? Do I want a space where I can grow and learn from others? Or I just want to come in here and work so I can take care of my kids and I'm going to do 100. Figure out what you want, and those wants can change. What you want today may be different in 6 months, maybe different in a year.
As you were talking, I was just listening and thinking about that because I used to be that person. We forget that our managers have managers, our bosses have bosses too. Even though what you said is probably difficult in the moment, and it doesn't excuse anything, I mean, that you can't address whatever it is that happened, but being generous in that way helps you step back. And then when you do approach your boss to talk about the situation, you'll be in a better position to have a better outcome than if you just assumed everything started and ended with whatever is happening between the two of you. So
Yes. Yeah.
giving people grace is I mean, you have to set your boundaries, but sometimes you actually benefits us more because the energy that we bring into the room
Yes.
or the energy that we bring into the conversation will be very, very different. And even if things don't end up going the way we want, we'll still end up in a better place because we didn't just react without giving ourselves the opportunity to weigh everything and then approach it from the place that we felt was best for us. So thank you for sharing that. That is so
So
great.
true.
So, okay, you remember a few months ago that you talked about how you did yoga? I was like,
Oh,
is there
that's
you
my
ever do
happy
that?
place.
I know. Is there anything that you don't do? Because yoga is one of those things that I want to be a yogi. It sounds so zen and wonderful, and especially if you're around like New York City, there's something about if you can do yoga, you're so awesome. However, I don't have the patience for all of that. But I do understand how important it is to have something like that to help you. What we've talked about today is just having that holistic view and holistic experience with your leadership, with everything you're doing. In the work you do with people, I know you integrate some of those practices like breath, presence, regulating yourself, which is very key for
Mhm.
leadership work. How does emotional regulation help leaders to think better? I know we touched on this a little bit, but I want to hear what you have to say. How does emotional regulations help leaders to think better, communicate better, even negotiate better, especially when environments are high stakes?
The first thing is breath, to your point, and I I want to address this because there's so many forms of yoga. Most people think yoga is just this Zen place that we're in. I started doing yoga in a room that is about 106 degrees. And the reason that I kept going back was because I could burn more calories doing this form of yoga. They call it 26 and 2. It used to be Bikram yoga. I could burn more calories doing that than I could running.
Mm.
When I started thinking about what it was doing for my hips, my knees, then I would just go for it 75 minutes or so. And that's how I got started in yoga. So anyone can do yoga. I just want to say that. And there's all different forms, you can just lay on the floor and that's yin, right? I think the first thing starts and ends with our breath. When you think about the thermostat in your house that controls the temperature, I believe breath is the central point for so many things within our body. I talk to clients about just breathing and I say, how many times have you consciously took a breath today? And they usually kind of look at me side eye because we're not consciously taking breaths. We breathe, but how many times do you actually fill up your lungs and then just exhale? You'd be amazed at the number of people that I ask to fill up their lungs for 6 seconds, 6 to 8 seconds, and they can't. And then I ask them to exhale for maybe 10 and they can't because we constantly inhale throughout the day. We don't exhale. And it's hard to just literally just exhale everything out into the universe. Be selfish with your inhale, take it all in, but be generous with your exhale. And that's why a lot of people can't exhale because we are not as generous as we need to be, right? We take it all in. So that's the first thing I do is the breath. A lot of times people don't get the opportunity to imagine. There used to be a time where the television would go off and it would just be psh. You have to go to bed. You got to imagine the show that you just watched. You got to read a book and imagine, right? But now, like, you got just constant things coming in. And so what I say to people is sometimes just ground yourself, right? Sometimes I'll ask them, take your shoes off, just feel one with the ground, and then just settle in, settle your eyes. You can close your eyes, you can keep them open, and let's imagine. And sometimes I take them to the place that they feel most comfortable. It could be the forest, it could be the beach. And then we just start to imagine. And then I just start doing sort of a meditation, right? And the meditation might be work related. They might be on the beach with a problem they have at work, but we've taken them to the place where their nervous system can relax. Because if your nervous system can't relax, your brain is wiring, is overdrive, overdrive. This adrenaline is flowing and you don't even realize it. So I do little things like that. And oftentimes people don't realize the woo woo is coming into the coaching. I can't just start with that, but we may move into that. The other thing when you talk about this emotional regulation, it's important for people to be able to name their emotions. I actually have a thing on my refrigerator that has all these emotions because one of the worst things in the world is to be frustrated when you are at work having a conversation in a meeting and someone names your emotion and it's not correct. Oh, Ranieka, you seem a bit agitated. Maybe I'm not agitated. Maybe I'm just confused, but it comes off as agitated. And so we say, no, 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 I'm not agitated. But then we don't tell people what we are. So then we probably get agitated because the person has named something that's not true. So, in order to have good emotional regulation, it is important for you to be able to name and know your emotions for yourself, because throughout a 24-hour period, you probably have so many emotions that you're going through throughout the day. Most of us only know mad, sad, glad, but we don't realize the number of emotions that are out there that we feel throughout maybe even hours, depending on one meeting to the next, one individual we're interacting with to the next. Yeah.
As you're saying this, I just thought about, because you just mentioned the fact that we don't get to shut off. Sometimes when I should be sleeping, I am on Instagram. And then
That
there's
part.
these things where they show it for kids, but I realized that yes, they show it for kids, but it also applies to adults. They always have these things in daycare centers or elementary schools where the kids can name their emotions. And we're like, oh, good for the kids, good for the kids. But I never thought to think that it's something that can apply to us grown folks. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking that is so true, because a lot of times in our workplaces, people name our emotions and they get it wrong because they don't have words for it. We now actually get agitated. Why don't you
Hmm.
understand me? That's not what I felt, but I don't know what I felt. So maybe what we can take out of this is that some of these elementary school kids can also work for you, because somewhere along the line we forget. Maybe we learned it, and I don't think we learned it, but things are different now. But even if you did,
Hmm.
you can always go and get that to help you figure out what you're feeling each time so you can address it properly. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that. That's an incredible tool that I'm going to advise everyone to start using, because I just realized that for a lot of things that we go through, the solutions are so simple.
They are.
Like what you said is so simple, but we don't do it. That's why you're amazing. That's why you're amazing at what you do. You know, earlier on, you talked about how in your tombstone they have like the when you came in and your expiration date, and there's an in between. And most times you think a lot about that in between. You're a mom, you're an incredible coach and all these things. And I'm pretty sure that legacy matters to you. As a mom that has children that you want to leave this world much better for them so they can do the same for their kids and
Hmm.
their and so on and so forth. How do you think about legacy? What kind of legacy and impact do you want to leave in this? And what is your thing in between the two dates?
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. I used to always say that if people still speak your name, you never die. You die when no one tells stories about you or they don't speak your name anymore. The more people you can touch in a positive way, although some people die and they're infamous, they got stories that aren't so great about them. If you want to leave a legacy, I think you have to have touched people. There are very few people that have this great legacy and only one person knows about them. Those stories get lost, and then someone has to find them and then tell another person about the story. So I think the biggest thing is, how do I have impact on more than one or two people? How does my legacy spread? I think the other thing, because I do think legacy is important, is what do I want to be known for? That's that choice piece. If you want to be known as the person who spread joy around the world, then live that, and then try to find other people that you could spread that with. If you want to be the person who was known who, pulled themselves up by the bootstrap and made a ton of money, then do it. Right? Be intentional about what you want to be known for. People think about legacy in their personal lives, but they don't think about it in their professional lives. There are probably 3 or 4 people that I have worked for that I've told many people about. I've told stories about working for them and how they changed me and what they did for me. I don't know if he'll be listening, but there's a guy, Larry Somerville, who I worked for. His legacy will live on. The things that he taught me at work, I'm teaching my children. They know Mr. Larry. They came to work with me and experienced him. So I think legacy is, you have to be intentional about it. You have to know that it's like tentacles, it's got to spread. And then the other thing is, you got to think about it from the perspective of maybe it's your personal legacy at home. Maybe it's your professional legacy, maybe it's as a servant and the service that you do, but you can leave a legacy everywhere with so many lives that you touch.
That is so true. And as you're speaking now, I just started thinking about, you said that people think about legacy when it comes to their personal life, but they don't think about legacy when it comes to their professional life. And as you mentioned, the people you work for the first time, I know people that, again, sometimes in life you remember not the good stories, but there's some people that I worked for or work with. Some of them were friends today. They sent me gifts when I had kids and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, you know what? That is their legacy. You know what I mean? And this is actually
Mhm.
incredible and nothing to take for granted. Remember that I was thinking once I get on the phone, I'm going to have to think of a way to honor them. That's something to think about too, because when we go to work, for most of us, it's just to go get a paycheck. And we don't think about what impact we can have in the workplace. No matter if it's the best workplace or the worst workplace, you can still have an impact there. And as long as you're there for any length of time, maybe it makes sense to just do more than get a paycheck as well. So that's something for us to think about. For everybody listening who know that they want more, they're ready for more, they want to negotiate better, and there's something pulling them towards the thing that they're becoming, but they don't know what to do.
Mhm.
What would your advice be for them? What's the most important thing that they need to begin to change in themselves or in their mindset so they can invite this future that is calling them?
Yeah. Well, I'm a coach, so I got to advocate for coaches. I remember the first person that I had as a coach. I had left my corporate career, and I left my corporate career like in a day. I did not rehearse. That's a whole nother story about how I left. And I wanted someone to help me with my resume. I wanted this change. I wanted to find this new job and hired someone. She wasn't cheap. She's about 350, 350, $400 an hour. And at the time, again, I wasn't working. Instead of helping me with my resume, she helped me to realize all of the trauma that I'd had for years working in corporate. And so for people who want that change, I think two things. I heard someone say this one time, so I can't take credit for this, is there is change and there's transformation. And we often talk a lot about transformation. Change is I'm here today, I'm gone tomorrow. That's a change. Life and death is change. Transformation is maybe I get sick and something happens over a period of time and you see progression. So most people are in the space of transformation. Some people, their transformation moves fast. Some people, their transformation is moving slow. They want this change. They want something different in their life. In order to get that change, something's got to be different. Now, maybe you woke up and you happen to see something on a morning television show and you're like, yeah, I need to be better at negotiating. That you're probably not going to change like that. You're probably not going to seek support, help. It probably is going to take a lot of different things to happen for you to say, I'm ready for this change. So you have to figure out where you are on that journey. If you want it bad enough, then you've got to figure out, can I do it alone? Some people can make the change in their lives all alone. The majority of people cannot because they lack accountability and they lack the ability to see what it looks like on the other side. Most people today don't have great imagination, so they don't know what something different looks like, something bigger, something better. And so I would say, and again, I am a coach, so I am going to advocate for coaches, but I think you need to find someone that you connect well with, someone that holds you accountable, and someone that can help you get to that space of being a better negotiator, whether it be for a position, for budget, for headcount, being a better negotiator in your home. So I just think you got to have somebody to work with in order to be able to do that if you realize that you just can't do it alone.
I don't even think that anybody should want to do it alone. Because what I tell people is, I mean, Kobe Bryant, everybody knows Kobe. He was the best basketball player. He still had coaches. So the idea of having a coach or a mentor outside of yourself is not because you can't do it. Because even the most successful people still have coaches, advisors, mentors, whatever. Because you always want to have that person that can hold the mirror up to you. They can see everything, can know everything. And then you talked about you went to this lady to get your resume done. She saw more than that. Because sometimes you might be going through something you think you know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't. Because we can't see ourselves. So again, I also advocate for what I say to people is it depends on how fast you want to get there. If you're a very patient person, you want to take 10 years, by all means. Some
That's
people,
right.
by doing a shorter time, you will not only gain more, but you also shorten the time it takes you to get there. I
Mhm.
also advocate for coaches. I've had coaches for different things, and they have changed my life. Like I was telling somebody the other day, somebody just told me one sentence that probably saved me tens of thousands of dollars I could have spent because I
Mhm.
thought I knew what I was doing. I, the expert, was going to do this expert thing. She's like, excuse me, because she was like, you don't need all that. This is all you need. I was in a place where I was like, okay, whatever she says, I'm going to take it, and then I'll see. Of course, I didn't
Mhm.
see it when she was saying it, but I saw it later. So there's always value to that. And if you feel like you know everything, there's also something someone said about like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You can't know everything. To your point, what you said about the rabbit thing, your bunny rabbit, just go
Oh.
find that person that will challenge you a little more. Open up another worldview and help you have more clarity. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Renika, what are you working on right now? And how can people connect with you and partner with you?
Oh, that's a good question. I have probably 3 or 4 things I'm working on. The first one I'll show you, we talked about before, but I have a calendar. It's called the Negotiator's Mindset. And I'm just going to be vulnerable and transparent. Everybody around me who's speaking and coaching has a book. And I was like, I got a book in me, but I don't really have the space and time to figure it out. And I had created these calendars, a 6 month calendar front and back. And I talk about we ready, we looking, we out. It's a part of my keynote. And so I'd have people put bubble, a circle of when they were ready. Might be on their birthday, might be whatever. This is when they're ready to start doing something different. We look in meaning I need my resources. I need to look for something different. And we out means I'm not in this situation that I'm currently in. So I made this calendar and they're on Etsy. I don't know if I'll put them on Amazon, but people, buy them different places. I use them for my talks. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. What's the next iteration of that? The calendar, the negotiator's mindset is the first thing that I'm working on. The second thing that I'm working on, if I'm totally transparent, is trying to continue to spread this message. I do dinner talks where we'll show up and partner with folks, get this message out to individuals on large stages. I'm working to put together more content. Sometimes people don't have the time to sit and listen to the podcast. If you want something self paced, I'm working on something self paced for individuals as well. And the last thing I'm working on is my 200-hour certification for yoga. I have a certification that's Bikram, which is a little bit different, but I'm working on my 200-hour certification because I want to do a yoga retreat sometime within the next 18 months.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. All this
Yeah.
information is going to be in the show notes, so make sure you go there, get the
Okay.
calendar, because it's very important to hold yourself accountable, and Renika's calendar is going to help you do that. So
Yeah.
we out date first, then go at the other ones. If you're in a situation where you need to get out, you have to have that date. Put it there
Yeah.
and tell a bunch of people so you don't keep changing it every other day.
That's right.
So
That's
everyone
right.
listening, make sure. Ranika, you're on LinkedIn, right?
I am, and I don't think there's another Ranieka Weston. I think I'm the only one there.
Is on LinkedIn and she has valuable insights that she shares with us every time she's on there. So if you're listening, make sure you tag Renika on LinkedIn, tag me as well, and tell us what you've learned today and what you appreciated and what you're going to take action on. We're happy to get your DMs. We'll respond to them. We'll help in any way that we can. But go ahead and follow Renika on LinkedIn and follow me as well. But thank you so much, Renika. This has been
Thank you.
wonderful,
Thank you.
incredible, and all the things I'm going to say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and listening. And I will see you in the next episode.
All right.
Bye.
See everyone soon. Take care. Bye bye.